My family came when I was 2 years old, and I'm 22 now, so we've been in this country for 20 years. And I was born in Mexico, a northern state called Nuevo Leon, and we came right to Michigan. My parents, they kind of weren't planning on staying here in the United States. They wanted to, their plan was actually to kind of work and be able to save money in order to start their family in Mexico and be able to like pay the bills in their home. They had just taken out a loan for a house and they weren't able to afford it, and so they were planning to come here in order to save. So but they ended up they fell in love with this country, and they wanted to start their family here, and they wanted to they thought their children would have a better opportunity here than in Mexico. So as of now, there isn't a specific system, I would call it, or a pathway in order for you to directly apply to citizenship. What there is in place, it's called a deferred action for childhood arrivals, and that's a very temporary act. It was an executive order that Obama passed in 2012, and that just grants permission for the restrictions are from 15 to 31-year-olds to be able to apply for a social security number, a driver's license, in order to further their education and be able to work. I was part of that movement in 2012, requesting what we wanted was the DREAM Act, very similar to the deferred action, based on the same requirements, the same concept of letting undocumented students further their education. But it was a more permanent solution that would grant citizenship to these students. So that's what we were aiming for, and the deferred action was what took place. And so in 2012, when it passed, I did apply to it a couple months after I kind of looked over it and kind of familiarized myself with this. And I applied for it, and I have been renewing my temporary pass to be here. There is requirements, like I said, you have to be between the ages of 15 and 31 in order to be eligible for this. You have to come to the country at a certain age, and I can't remember exactly what that age is. You had to have been here when Obama announced it in 2012. I believe you had to be here a certain amount of years as well. And there is a $465 fee to apply, and you have to renew it every 2 years, so you have to pay that fee every time. And a lot of lawyers are and were charging to fill out these applications anywhere from like $500 to $1,000. So it's a very expensive process, and it's a process that you have to do every 2 years, like I said, because it's a temporary permit. So that limits a lot, a lot of the undocumented population that isn't able to afford this. One of the requirements is that you either had to have been in school, be currently in school, or have a high school diploma or GED, and that is one barrier that a lot of undocumented people from the age of 15 to 31, some of them didn't come to this country to continue to study. They came to help their parents for working and for saving money and making money to provide for the family. So that was something that some people were not eligible to apply for this permit because they didn't have that education. In high school, I always knew that I was undocumented, but I didn't really realize what that meant until my senior year of high school. when I was looking into colleges, I graduated top 3 of my class, and I loved school, and I knew that I wanted to go to college. And when I was looking to apply to schools, even some of the websites online, they require you to put in a social security number, and I didn't have one. And a lot of my advisors that I talked to, they weren't knowledgeable in this area. They didn't know what it meant to be undocumented and want to further your education. So I didn't really have the resources that I needed to get where I wanted to be. That's why I started getting involved in my community and with immigrant rights organizations. Um, and that's how I was able to learn more about what we can do and what resources there is in the community. We actually put a guide together for students to further their, kind of like a pathway to how to further their education. And I did attend community college for 2 years. Meanwhile, I was figuring out what were my options because I couldn't apply for financial aid. I couldn't take out loans. Like I said, I didn't have Social Security, so that was a huge barrier. Um, so I would either have to like apply for private scholarships of that sort. So by talking to the right people, I was able to find advisors that were able to help me somehow. And Western was the reason why I chose Western is because they had a very undocumented, friendly environment, and the advisors were willing to help me and willing to find scholarships for me to attend Western. So that's how I was able to come here. I envision myself working at a university or a college, or even at a high school level as well, helping students that don't have those resources available to them to further their education. It doesn't have to be necessarily that they are coming from an undocumented background, but any barriers that they might be experiencing in their life, because I don't want the same thing to happen to them. How I struggled so much to just be able to come to college, I want to be able to provide that for them. Yes, I a lot of the times I do get the question, why don't you just apply for citizenship? So there isn't a correct process or kind of like a system in place or a pathway where I can just go sign up for citizenship. It doesn't work that way. There isn't really anything in place where I could voluntarily just apply for citizenship. So if that became available, of course, I would, I plan on staying here. This is my home. There isn't quite a system in place. I believe it was in 1986 where they had immigration reform, and they were able to provide citizenship for a lot of undocumented families that were here in order for them to continue to work and stay here legally. There hasn't been anything like that since then, so it's been a very long time. Um, I would like for there to be something like that again, um, where families are able to apply and stay here legally. It would probably be a very long process for everybody to apply and do that, but I think it would be a start. And then the whole system of creating a system for other countries to come to the United States legally is something that would probably take a long time, but that definitely would be a goal that I would like to see. A lot of the times, since I've been so involved with the undocumented families, I see um, dads, fathers, brothers, sons that get deported while they're working, and that really splits up the family. A lot of the times, um, they'll be sent back to Mexico or they'll be detained in a prison until they figure out what the case is going to be like. And I see a lot of families that become, divided. A lot of families kind of being forced to go back to Mexico. Um, they in 2008 they made passed a law that you have to have a social security number in order to apply for a driver's license. So that was a huge deal for the undocumented community because now they weren't able to drive legally, and if you were to get pulled over, then you wouldn't be able to provide them with a valid driver's license. Therefore, they would question and investigate and ask you for your status, and that's how I think that's a big fear in the community. If you think about it, if you don't have your driver's license, you have to be very careful when you're out in your outings. Very limited traveling. You can't travel through flights because you don't have your valid driver's license. So a lot of the times, I think that people don't realize what a privilege it is to be able to have an identification, social security, and how much you use that on a daily basis. I think educating people, it's really important. That's why I became so involved in my community, because I wanted to be able to educate myself and then therefore educate others. Like I said, when I was in high school, my counselors had no idea how to help me, or even the advisors from universities at that time did not know how to help me. And that was their job, to admit students, to help them. Um, you know, enroll in a college and pursue a career. And my organizations that I was involved in, we did a lot of educating, going and doing presentations in high schools, in colleges, to educate staff members on this issue and what they can do to better help the undocumented community. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm very outgoing, I'm very open, and a lot of people aren't, so they don't have the same views that I do. They may fear more things than I do, and it's just almost like you're living. Some people are living in the shadows because they have fear, and all they want is an opportunity to better themselves, just like anyone else in this country, and to be able to further their education, be able to, move their family forward. So I think that everyone should be educated on issues around everything that's going on in our country because, like I mentioned, our country is made up of a lot of unique individuals, and we all need to be supportive of each other and helping each other out.